National Insurance Clearinghouse, the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, presents a Bravo video event, the Business Insurance Zone, dedicated to financial professionals who use insurance in their practice. And on today's show, the Modernized Combination Annuity with Ken Davis, CPA. And now the host of the Business Insurance Zone, the whiz of the biz, insurance columnist Steve Savant.
Well, welcome everybody to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Eric Palmer, still filling in this week for Steve Savant. Now, we're broadcasting live to a nationwide audience of insurance and financial professionals here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of the largest fountain in America. And with me still this week, Ken Davis. Glad to still have you on the show, Ken.
Good to see you, Eric.
Now, as we mentioned before, Ken, a CPA, CLU, CHFC, CFP.
You got it.
All in one breath. What an amazing treat to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And we've been talking about some great stuff this week. You know, at the very beginning, we're talking about that invisible taxation. You know, that's a buzzword that I want everybody to take away here, is that, you know, there's more to it than meets the eye, and you might not just be paying what your tax bracket says. It could be much higher than that.
Yeah, and you know, it's that season. I just want to point out as we make our choices and how we vote, whether it's the two different parties, is, you know, they say we're taxing the rich, and we proved today with this taxation of Social Security, and both parties are responsible for this law, so I'm not picking sides. The not-so-rich people are getting hammered with the effective 42% tax brackets.
That's huge. I mean, those numbers just blow my mind. And we talked in the last couple of days about some of the basics. How is Social Security taxed? You know, how does adjusted gross income add to other things in the grand calculation, if you will, to determine how much of your Social Security is taxed? We also talked about combo annuities. That's how we're addressing this problem. And on yesterday's show, we talked about some of the old ways, or the old mindset, if you will, on combination annuities, the split annuity concept, and the ability with a high interest rate environment to preserve principal while also addressing the problem. But in today's environment, that's just not the case. And you've got this great term. It's called the modernized combo annuity. So talk for a second. What do you mean by modernized combo annuity?
Okay, well, let's just get down the real solid basics, and that is, the combo annuity concept was the deferred piece grew the actual cash on a guaranteed basis back to the original total invested that was split into two annuities. Combo annuities are sometimes called split annuities. So we split it into deferred, and part of it was in the immediate, okay? Well, with interest rates so low, there's not much left for the immediate annuity portion, which means much lower distribution rates. So what can we do to pump this up, make it look better, and utilize it? Now we're going to shift, as the industry has shifted. Our focus has always been preserving capital, letting those retirees hang on to that money as long as possible, buying that CD or that fixed annuity and just spending the interest.
Right.
Well, now we're learning that with the guarantees that insurance companies can provide, we can actually confidently utilize what we used to call the seed corn. We can use the principal and interest and guarantee the client that they're going to have income for the rest of their life. And it's really critical to understand we're going from a guaranteed principal cash rebuild to a guaranteed income strategy. That's your big differentiation right there, is we're going to a guaranteed income strategy from a guaranteed cash value. And then later on at the very end of the show, we're going to talk about where we're going to take some risk over maybe a 15-year period and essentially hope that these relatively conservative assets will grow even more income. So we're introducing a new level of risk, and I have to, in this environment of all this compliance and these lawsuits and things that we're all buzzing about, you have to absolutely make sure the client understands that not rebuilding capital, we're maintaining income.
Well, and I think that's something that as advisors we have to get our brains around. We're not preserving capital anymore. We're getting into an income for life scenario, and sometimes it's joint income. We have to take both parties into consideration. And I mean, the cost of living is just too darn high for us to try to do the old preservation of capital. You know, people need more net spendable dollars. They need, they can't just change their lifestyle overnight.
Right.
So income is the key focus here, and it's income for life. And I think that by changing your mindset, you're going to start to identify better with today's consumer, because today's consumer is going to respond to a high income number if you can guarantee it, and I think they'll be less concerned about the preservation of principal if you're answering that number one income question.
Well, and let's talk about one of the other issues of these concepts is inflation has been relatively low for quite some time, and a lot of us in the industry are anticipating that with this massive debt that we have, and Congress is now, government's borrowing 42% of their budget each year, and it's just scheduled to get worse.
Right.
We're going to see monetization of debt. We're going to see the government creating money to pay the debt off, which is going to cause inflation. We're not there yet. We've been anticipating it for a couple of years, hasn't come yet, but it will come, and when it does, it could be rather fierce. So the idea of having a guaranteed income by itself is not sufficient. We have to consider the potential for higher inflation, higher interest rates, and we don't want to just buy that indexed annuity, live off that 5 or 6% of the principal for life, because it won't be enough.
Well, and we think about healthcare costs. I mean, that's one of the fastest growing. They say in the next 10, 15 years, that's going to nearly triple. So if we're addressing inflation, we also need to be addressing that potential that your pharmaceuticals and maybe your doctor visits are going to start costing you a lot more.
Right. So let's get into what is the modernized combo annuity. Combo annuity is a portion in an immediate annuity and a portion in deferred. And we talked about the more complex version of having maybe a 5-year immediate and then having layers of deferred annuities. So in the prior show we did a 5-year immediate, a 5-year deferred, another 5-year deferred, and after the immediate annuity is done and gone, we switch on the second layer. And when that layer's done, turn on the third layer. So what's the fourth layer? Well, we got a couple of choices. One we're going to talk about predominantly is the indexed annuity.
Right.
With the lifetime income benefit rider. Okay? Yes, the index is important. Yes, the cap rates and all these funny things that we like to jump into, but we're really making an income sale here.
Right.
We're really focused, and I think with the Cactus Conference we pointed out, one of the wholesalers, some companies are focused on growth, some are more on income. This is an income play.
Right.
Okay, this is a guaranteed income play. So we're going to have that fourth piece and a lifetime income benefit rider. So what's that doing? It gives me 5 years for the immediate, 5 years deferred, 5 years deferred. I've got 15 years, so a 65-year-old person, starting then, is 80 when this fourth piece kicks in. Right?
Well, that's really important to point out the timeline there, because right now the NAIC Model Regulation, that Suitability Act, is coming across in multiple states, and it's catching on like wildfire. Florida just picked it up. It's going to be every other state after that. And what that's doing is it's forcing annuity carriers to build these riders and these products on 10-year surrender models. But if we're 15 years out, I think one of the most important things to point out here is you've got to make sure that income rider is going to keep compounding.
That's
the
right.
majority of the products out there that you're comfortable with, you may really like them. It's your favorite company, it's your favorite brochure. But if that income rider doesn't keep compounding for 15 years, if it cuts right off at 10, then you're selling yourself short. Contact Brokers Alliance, talk to our annuity division. It's extension 125, and they're actually going to help you identify the products. And we take a very non-biased approach to our product selection. We choose the ones that actually work within the model that we're fitting it into, and there's a handful of products out there that'll give you 20 years of that compounded growth. 15 years being the model here that we're talking about, you can't sell yourself short.
Well, and the thing is that points out a good point. If we don't have an annuity we like for 15 years and have to settle for 10, then we have to have the option of then doing a 1035 into a new one with another 5 or 10 years on the guarantee. And we won't know exactly what that is till then. However, if I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to take the risk that interest rates aren't going lower. They're going to go higher.
Right.
So my best guess, 10 years should be plenty for that to kick in. And somewhere along the line, we may take one of those other 5-year deferreds and convert it into
move that
something
over as
later.
well.
So we're looking for flexibility.
Keep in mind with inflation, and we've seen this historically. There's a lateral approach to the interest rates in annuities, caps in annuities, and the interest rate environment as a whole. Same with life insurance products. If we see these interest rates going up, we should assume that the products are going to provide a little bit better interest rate as well, which means 10 years from now, we might reshuffle the cards, and I think it's important to make your client aware of that. We need to meet every 5 years, at the very least, every year if you're really doing your job, but we need to meet often enough so that I can keep coming back to this model and tweaking it if things get a little bit better.
Well, and let me point out that we've been talking about guaranteed concepts. the client may choose to take more risk because it may serve them better. For instance, maybe I do a 5-year guarantee, but maybe I do something with a short withdrawal penalty period where it's adjusting annually, and I'm taking the risk that, yeah, I'm only starting around 2% or something, but it can get bumped up each year as interest rates and inflation, and I'm happier taking that risk than a guarantee and being locked in. At the minimum, with these 5-year segments, we're readjusting every 5 years, and in 5 years we may change the whole strategy. We don't have to keep doing 5-year segments. We could say, wow, interest rates are through the roof, I'm going out 10 or 15.
Right.
Okay. And if we're in that environment, that may make sense. The key is flexibility by having segments, immediate annuity, deferred annuity, and now an index annuity with an income rider. We have choices. The income rider really is what allows us to spend more of these other numbers, these immediate and deferreds, because I know that this number will grow to a guaranteed number that can then turn on and create an income. And let's not forget that at 80 years old, with higher interest rates, we may find that instead of taking the guaranteed income distribution, we may just turn the whole thing into a lifetime immediate annuity at 80 and really start to crank some numbers out, even if that number isn't the original 100 we started with and it's 60. The numbers with high interest rates and that advanced age may be sufficient to carry it. So there's one more possibility.
You make a really good point. Don't always assume that we're going to trigger that lifetime income rider. The annuitization, taking advantage of life expectancy credits could really come into play here. And if we're talking about an older client, we're going to look at all options. And I think that's something really important to point out. At Brokers Alliance, when you talk to our annuity staff, when you talk to Ken, when you talk to myself, we're looking at all of the options. And it's not because we favor one over the other. It's because if you're showing your client everything, they're going to make the best choice for them, and you've done your job in covering all your bases.
That's right. So, and I'm really concerned about not locking in these low interest rates. And I know this is a bit of an anathema, but we're not getting a whole lot of return or interest rate on a 5-year immediate. So,
we're lucky to be right around 3%.
Okay. So, there are other short options too. And honest, as planners, we need to look at that. Sure, I would love to do the annuities. I'd make more money off of that, but I need to make sure we're doing it right for the client. And again, when you're working with outside advisors that are reviewing this thing, if they see you showing an option that isn't going to feather your nest, that's going to create some trust and relationship, which that could feed you much better if you're getting referrals from them. If they're willing to go through that database and say, here's all my clients that have money on line 20B, and boy, I really like this concept, and let's figure out how we can help these other clients. Boy, you just opened up a whole gold mine for yourself.
Well, you make a great point. We talked about networking with CPAs, but also networking with other financial advisors and professionals out there. Some money managers would look to you to help them build a strategy together. Maybe the first leg caters to them, the second leg possibly caters to you. You're listening to the Business Insurance Zone, the talk show that focuses on insurance in your practice. In the next segment, we're going to address more of this, the advantages to the modern combo annuity, and we're really going to dig in. If you have any questions about what we're talking about here, please email us at thebiz@brokersalliance.com or give us a call, 1-800-290-7226, extension 147. Ken and I are going to be right back after a word from one of our premier product providers. Stay tuned.
Whether you're a professional planner pursuing a strategic partner or an insurance distributor seeking a national alliance, your business just went into overdrive. Now enter the largest resource of insurance products and services with unparalleled access to a worldwide audience of consumers through the National Insurance Clearinghouse, the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, who can take your company and launch it into the stratosphere of success. With countermeasures, the most comprehensive carrier intel in the industry, the MASH unit with field triage underwriting and the premium tolerance test, the life insurance financial evaluation, the most rigorous policy review, and Bravo high definition broadcasting with online social media. Your search just ended.
Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Eric Palmer, filling in this week for Steve Savant. With me, of course, is Ken Davis, and Ken and I are addressing some major issues here on the annuity laddering strategies, the combo annuities that are out there, and the advantages that we can bring. Remember, before moving forward with any of the planning strategies on this show, seek approval with your CPA, attorney, and your broker-dealer compliance department. You can call us toll-free at 800-290-7226, extension 147. You can write us at thebiz@brokersalliance.com for any of your quotes or information or questions about life insurance, annuities, disability, long-term care, and group pension. And it's not what I know, it's who I know. I know Ken Davis, and by now you know Ken Davis as being one of our premier providers of information and tax issues and concepts. Ken, we appreciate you being on the show. We were talking at the first half there about some really good stuff for the new modernized version of the combo annuity. So let's just kind of summarize real quick in the second half here to kick things off. The basics of what the modern annuity is, or the modern combo annuity.
Well, let's look at what we're doing with layering strategies. One, we're transitioning for the baby boomers that have been burned in the stock market, have very low interest rates. How do we get them more net spendable cash, money in their pocket to spend, and how do we do it safely? Well, in the past, we seem to be just over concerned about retaining principal.
Right.
These concepts allow us to dip into principal and have guaranteed income instead. And quite frankly, the only ones that really miss out on this potentially are the kids. And most of the baby boomers I talk to, it's like, okay, I love my kids, I get their college education, I took care of them, now it's their turn. Okay, so take care of me first. And I hear that message over and over again. Some feel differently, but that's pretty much our modern culture. The other thing is this allows principal and interest to be paid and to put some guarantees for income back in place, which helps beef up. So if I'm not just getting those low interest rates, but I get principal and interest, that allows me to do that. One of my favorite strategies is how do I use all this tax knowledge that I have to enhance the financial planning environment. And we went ad infinitum earlier on the shows about the taxation of Social Security, how combo annuities and that layering strategy creates much, much lower income that flows through and affects adjusted gross income, ultimately the taxation of Social Security and Medicare premiums. So we're adding an additional spendable layer, as it were, of reduction of taxes. So by introducing principal and interest concept and relief of taxation, now we're focusing on the bottom line. That's what CPAs are good at, right? Is the bottom line.
Right.
And the salesperson and the CEO that's aggressive is pump those sales, pump that top line, line. But we're saying, hey, the baby boomers don't want to take that risk anymore, can't really afford to take that risk anymore, so where can we adjust?
Well, we talk about it's a modern combo annuity strategy, but really it's addressing a modern consumer. The baby boomers are more risk adverse. I mean, they're getting more conservative in their mindset, but they're not necessarily conservative in their spending habits.
Right.
So the income is the biggest issue there. And at the end of the day, I've been on appointments myself where we ask about what is your goal, what's your total income goal, and they tell you a number. Then you see what they have, and you're thinking to yourself, how in the heck am I going to reach this goal for my client? Because our spending habits are off the charts. So when we say modern combo annuity, it's not so much even the products that we're using, because it has a lot to do with that, but it's also we're addressing a modern consumer with a different mindset. It's not about preserving principal as much as it is maximizing the amount of income after tax that I get in my hand that I can go spend.
Yeah, the old combo annuity didn't really focus on the reduction of taxation of Social Security income. It was talking about a lower taxable income to start with and then lower tax brackets. We still get that, but now we're layering on the Social Security. And in the interim, from those old days when we used to push those concepts, and appropriately so, we've now, the tax law has emerged where more and more governments doing this invisible taxation where they're phasing out deductions, phasing out exemptions, phasing out credits, taxing Social Security, increasing Medicare taxes on AGI. I mean, the list goes on, and it's one of the favorite things for Congress to do is to say, well, the tax bracket, you're only in a 25% bracket. And we showed a 65-year-old woman in a 25% bracket in our first show paying $4,200 on 10 grand at a 42% effective rate. So we're focusing, as the tax laws have changed, as our consumer has changed, and as the products have changed, that this wouldn't be possible without a lifetime income benefit rider. This ability to focus on guaranteed income, that is the new concept that marries to the old concept.
And we're talking about guarantees. The products that Ken's talking about here today is first of all, immediate annuities, which you know right now what you're going to get. We're talking about a multi-year guarantee or a short-term fixed annuity, which is very predictable. We have some moving parts in those products like market value adjustments, but if you're sticking with the plan, you're going to get the numbers that we're talking about. Then, of course, that tail end of the strategy here, the index annuity with the lifetime income rider. Why is it so important? And I get into conversations a lot with our advisors about annuitization versus income riders. And there's some strategies out there that use annuitization, kind of assuming rates based on where they, current assumption rates today. And in some cases, you can show more income. But at the end of the day, let's back it up and talk about that income rider one more time. Why is that so important? Not just because it's guaranteed, but there's some flexibility built in there.
Well, think about it. If you can find a product that has a 15-year guarantee, we all know that over time, compounded interest does some phenomenal things. So if you've got a rider that'll compound at 6 or 7% over 15 years, you know those numbers are going to be rather large. And so now we're rebuilding the income base, not the capital base, not the cash base, but the income base. But let's also talk about the possibility of what's going to happen with index. Everything I've been saying today has been focused on the income rider because I really don't believe in current circumstances with low cap rates that you can catch up to that income rider with your indexing strategies.
Right.
Generally, you have to assume that's going to be the case. And quite frankly, I've told clients, and our agents have to, Mr. Client, if you go into this thing, you're locked down. They're going to hit you with penalties. They're going to hit you with market value adjustments.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to get out of this thing. So when you make a commitment, you're getting married for life, and unlike divorce, this one's a lot harder to get out of in terms of costs, right? So I want to make that really clear because I don't want people to be misled, and we need to make sure we protect ourselves in how we communicate this stuff to our clients. One of the benefits is these indexing strategies, but cap rates, what happens historically with cap rates, Eric? You know that better than I do.
Well, over time, cap rates have come down.
Why?
Interest rate environments come down.
Right. So interest rates come down, cap rates come down.
Right.
Okay. And why is that? Well, when we look in the background, when we talk to the money managers that are managing the money for the insurance companies, they take their earnings and go out and buy options from investment bankers.
Right.
Well, if interest rates are down and income's down, they're going to buy less options, right? Well, what happens if interest rates rise? Well, we don't get an immediate bump. Their portfolios are laddered. The short stuff matures and goes back to the top of the ladder at the higher interest rates. Slowly but surely, the averages on these laddered bond funds eventually catch up and create much higher and higher interest income, and they have more and more money to buy the options. And so what does that lead us to is the potential, can't guarantee it, but the potential of higher cap rates on these annuities, and historically what's happened when interest rates go up.
We see the trend go up.
Right. And
Well,
I'm turning into the host because you know that stuff better than I do.
Absolutely, and I think that it's important to note that these products can do that, but at the end of the day, that's just sort of icing on the cake. It's nice to know that the inside principle in these index contracts especially could maybe be or maybe last a little bit longer, which in turn could be something passed on to the next generation, but it doesn't all fall within that boundary, and that leads me into another good point because we've got fees and charges on these products. You add an income rider, today it's costing you nearly 1%. But address that for a second. Really, I think that with this combo strategy, that kind of takes that out of the equation a little bit. It makes it less of an issue for a client purchasing the product. Would you say that's correct?
Right, I would. And we want to talk about the pluses and the minuses so that you are aware and you present appropriately. Not only are there the traditional penalties, there's also the vesting of bonuses can be taken away. And now penalties or fees for the lifetime income benefit rider are assessed against the cash value that's accumulating until that goes to zero and there's nothing left to do it.
Right.
Now what's interesting is some of the contracts will do it on that original amount. Other contracts do it at that declining cash value amount. So that's really important for us to know, and that's where your experts at Brokers Alliance know which of those are most appropriate.
And we also see it being assessed based on the income account value, which is always going to go up. So if you have a decreasing account value, and an increasing income account value, your fee could possibly always be drowning or eating up that account value or that cash value inside these annuities. So it's good to be aware of all those moving parts, because at the end of the day, we still want to show something conservative to our clients. We don't want to tear up all their cash, especially if that's on the tail end of the spectrum, and they end up maybe not needing that for the income later on. Maybe they sold some real estate. So we want to make sure that we're using the correct products that don't just eat away the cash values, but also provide those significant income increases.
Right.
Well, I think that we've talked about a lot of stuff here. One of the biggest issues now is going to be, how can we illustrate this? How can we package this together? So make sure you contact us here at Brokers Alliance. We have a lot of information that we can put in your hands to educate on this. Later on in the week, you're going to be talking with Steve a little bit about transparency and compliance, and I think that's one of the biggest issues we can talk about. So if you've been watching us all week, make sure you stick around for the rest of the episodes that will come after this. Steve will be back, but we're going to talk about, I think, the most important part here, which is the transparency, the compliance, and how can you set yourself above the rest in the marketplace. We've addressed a lot of issues here today. I think at this point, we always run out of time just when things start getting good. So remember to give us a call. You can download and you can view this show and all of our shows in HD 1080p. It's at our on-demand section. Just click on the red button on our website. There's a the video on the right-hand side just beneath it. You can click the red button. There's a search tool. You can search and index all the different topics. Just remember that it's at brokersalliance.com. You can find us on all of our social media networks: YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So again, we're all over the web. We're all over the place. YouTube's probably one of the best places to go to catch that information. And again, my name is Eric Palmer. I was filling in this week for Steve Savant, but you've been listening to the Business Insurance Zone. I've got Ken Davis with us here. Thanks so much again, Ken, for being on the show.
Pleasure.
That's the buzz on the biz for today. Get into the zone, the Business Insurance Zone.
This has been a Bravo video event of the National Insurance Clearinghouse, the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, one of the largest distributors of insurance products and services to a nationwide network of insurance professionals. Need insurance guidance? Call Brokers Alliance. The Business Insurance Zone, dedicated to financial professionals who use insurance in their practice.